Hello, everybody. This is Deb Johnson with Our Time to Quilt on this sunshine, intermittent sunshine, but still humid and warm Sunday. Hello, everybody. How are you? I hope you're doing well. If any of you are from Kentucky, I am so sorry about what's going on. So hello, Marcia is here and Debbie is here. It is so good to see you. So today I have been working on, I've had a busy week. I know that I said I'm going to do some dyeing next weekend. The only kind of dyeing I'm going to do is when I'm done with this, I'm going to go collapse in my recliner and paint beads, because let me tell you about my week. I Tuesday had to go back to the endodontist to have him check a tooth, and he put me on some more antibiotics. This Tuesday, I'm having the crown done, and I don't like having a crown done. This is when I wish I had an MP3 player so I could kind of put some music on and try not to listen. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. But then, so I had to do that Tuesday, and then Wednesday I had both little dogs groomed, and I don't know, just having two places to go. You know, we're so used to being home now because of COVID. So it was a little frustrating for me. And then I had to go back out and pick up the medicine. I mean, it was like, I just need to stay home and focus. So, oh, are you talking about these or the hand painted? Oh man, I can't wait to show them to you next week, because I've gotten done like 5 and I've done them slightly different. A lot of fun. So anyway, so yesterday, Friday, I spent most of the day sewing on the Indigo Quilt. And I have to tell you, when you work on a quilt pattern, every time I think I want to make a quilt, I usually pick out something like that, where every block has 27 pieces and there are Y seams and all different kinds of things, right? Well, this time, the block that caught my eye was just a courthouse steps. Just a deer courthouse steps. The benefit of that is I have done chain piecing and done the same thing. I had 29 blocks left, because remember, last week I did a test block. And that's a good hint. If you are using a kit or recommended fabrics, then you don't have to worry. Let me get some lotion on my hands. They're feeling a little dry. But you don't really have to worry how you're going to feel about the fabrics, because somebody else has already done the choosing and on. So they have a reasonably good idea it's going to look good together. But let's say you choose out of your stash. I had a quilting friend tell me years ago, 30 years ago, always make one test block. Because hi, Michelle Lang. And Barbara Smith, yay! What you think you see in your head may not be what you actually put together at the sewing machine. So that is very good advice, because don't go through cutting up all that fabric and then realizing, I don't like it. So a test block is a good thing. So anyway, now, so Friday I spent a lot of time sewing. Yesterday, what did I do in the morning? I ended up cleaning the house. Oh, I spent almost 4 hours down here cleaning, then went upstairs, cleaned the house, and then spent 3 hours sewing. So I'm tired today. And Mark did that. He went outside and cut the grass, and he trimmed up some trees and shrubs all the way down and around our corner lot here. So we're both today taking it easy. But, that's the way I'd rather do it. It just work really hard, get it done, and So thank you, Michelle. I hung that up there for a great reason. And thank you for giving me the lead in to talk about it. That is a Jenny Beyer quilt that I worked on in my former life. I went to Jenny Beyer's shop. She helped me pick out the fabric. Yes. And it's one of her patterns. And with this block, I did it all by hand. And I found the bag of stuff to go with it, which I was really, really tickled over. And the bag said 2002, 20 years ago. And I was still a juvenile in my quilt history because I hadn't really made that many quilts. I learned around 1990-ish, but then I kind of put it down busy raising kids. The reason I am showing you this is because someone asked about fabrics running. And this is my classic case of fabrics running. And I had worked on this all by hand. See all the hand stitches? I cut it. I had little templates. I cut it out, all the pieces by hand, one at a time. I then sewed it together by hand. And then I was going somewhere and I spilled a big Coca-Cola into the bag. And I don't know if you can see the pinkish hue. Some pieces are a lot more pronounced than others. When I washed it, the dark red ran. Hi, Miss Jody, sweetheart. And the dark red ran. And when I washed it to get the Coke out, then it ran. I didn't know about color catchers then. So I just stuck it in a plastic bag, tucked it away. It broke my heart. And I had all but one block done. Let me see, 4 times 4, 16, 17, 18, 19, there's 20 blocks. I had 19 made, and I just put it away. Well, I've recently came across it again. And so last week when I pulled it out to, let me move back so you can see it good. When I pulled it out to show one of our members about my experience with colors running. And I told her the blues and the reds are the ones you really have to watch out for. But for a while after this, I washed all my fabrics. And then it was like modern fabrics. Remember, this fabric's over 20 years old. Modern fabrics are less likely to run. And if you're concerned, then sure, especially certain colors, like I said, red and blue. And if they're very saturated, do you see how saturated those reds are? So that's one thing you have to worry about. But anyway, I took it out last week and I realized that I already had most of them grouped together in pairs. So this past week, I sewed 4 sets of pairs together in blocks of 4. And I like doing it that way. With this quilt, it's been washed twice without, just blocks, hand piece blocks. So they get kind of wonky. So I sprayed them with a fine mist of water, and I tried to block them the best I could, meaning tried to get them to back to a square. And so I blocked them the best I could. Then I starched them, and then I started hand sewing the pairs together. So I have 2 blocks of 4 already done. And if you look at this, let me bring this over to you better. And let me zoom in. Whoops, hold on just a second. Let me zoom in, see if, okay. Up here, let me see if I can find it. See the safety pins on it? See, right near the in between those 2 blocks of 4, there are safety pins. And that is one of my best hints that I can give you. Whoa, let's back out. One of my best hints I can give you is keep safety pins handy, because what I do is as I'm ironing the block after it's been sewn, every once in a while I'll see a defect, whether I've nipped the thread, the material just a touch, or whether a seam has started to come loose, or I just don't like the way the seam matches. I'll put a safety pin, okay? That tells me go back and see what needs attention there, because trust me, you will forget. Now, in one case, I had nipped a bit of the fabric. Now look at this. In this one, the seam has kind of popped loose. So I'll make sure that I put, because it shows once you wash it and iron it, it shows. So now I'll put a safety pin right there, and it'll tell me, look there, there's something that needs attention. So I just wanted to give you that hint. Safety pins are great. The modern safety pins don't rust, not like the old ones did. And that way you know to go back, and because you don't always want to stop and fix every mistake along the way. Let's say you're busy trying to put the blocks together. Put a safety pin there, you know to go back. Now, good news is, you notice I have the design wall set up very nicely. I used my little sticky Velcro type hook and loop dots today. So now I can take this back over and put it against the flannel on the wall, and it stays, and no more pins to get stuck. So I'm loving it. And it's so funny because I was thinking, I'm going to have to put both sides of the Velcro on the board so they'll stick. And wait a minute, Deb, you're taking the loop, the hook part, and you're putting it on flannel. I went, oh, that's great. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of the soft part that I'm not going to use. But these things work great. Mark said, is it going to leave a residue on the fabric? And I went, nah, I'm not worried about that, because I'm not going to leave it on them forever. And that's the biggest problem. If you put any kind of tape on any surface, a sewing machine, a cutting board, a ruler, it's the length of time you leave it on that's going to get you in trouble. And if that becomes a problem, then you need to get some goop off, use some alcohol, and try to get the residue. But I think I'm really going to like this, and no more sticking. The reason I got those little Velcro dots is because one of the last shows I went to move the frame, and as I did this, a needle went right into my hand. That was so painful. I said, I'm not doing that anymore. Oh, Jody, we're so glad you're here too. So anyway, to go ahead and finish up about this quilt, I found the bag with all of the original stuff I planned to do. And as I told you, I needed one more block, and I had found a couple little pieces of it, but not all of it. Well, so I went searching. I have a 3-door drawer, little plastic storage thing like you can buy from Walmart. And so I went in my Jenny Beyer storage shelves, because I had a piece like this. Actually, it didn't even have this on it. I put that on it. And a piece like this. And I found everything I needed, because I was sitting there thinking, Before I found the bag with all the accessories, I thought I'm just going to have to wing this from the stash. But I found everything I needed. So, and you know what? If we have time before go today, I'll do a little hand sewing and show you things like a Y seam. And actually, if you're having any problems with certain seams, set-in seams or Y seams, they're called, it's easier to do them by hand than by machine. So I will put this right here and hope to remember it. But it's so cool. I was hoping to find a pattern. Didn't find a pattern. So I don't know what to do. Oh, this is so cute. Adding binding to a quilt. And 1999. This is probably older than 2000. It's probably from 1999. And come to think about it, it makes sense with the timing because my ex, it was a real rough time. I discovered some things he had been doing. And so with him trying to make it up to me, we went to Jenny Byers and got some fabric. I don't think that was quite going to make it work. But here are instructions. Now, this instructions from 2000. So it's probably 99 to 2000. And this is framing a square or rectangle with a border print. And this is where she teaches you how to make the border print meet in the middle. And so this is going to be fun. And so when I do that, I will have to give you a little tutorial on it. Because border prints are wonderful, but then you're like, how do I make sure that it's the same on either side? I wanted to show you something. This was so long ago that I wanted to make templates. Look at this template. It was made out of, the sleeves that you put pages in? I must not have had real plastic. So I used a sleeve, a soft thing, and put tape around the edge. That is hilarious. But I just thought I would show you. It is so much fun it is so much fun to find something from the past. So now I want to take a moment to show you. Like, here's one. Isn't that cute? That was piece E. I had to do 160 of those pieces. F4. So it must have been F4, must have been a color or something. I'm not sure. But here I will show you. Whoa. Let me I don't want anything to fall on the floor. Okay, here we go. I went ahead and pre-made the binding. I like usually using a dark binding, it's like putting a black picture frame on something. So I chose the darkest. I already pre-made all of my binding and used one of my little bobbin tenders for that. So that's already done. Then I decided, I looked at the quilt, looked and looked, the lighter of the reds, which is that runs horizontal in the middle and the vertical in the middle. I decided to use that for my inner border. And I put an inner border on this because I looked at it and said, what are the colors that I want to emphasize on this? That's why I chose this. I said, I think that red will make it pop. So the other colors I could have chosen are this gold, dull gold, pink, green. Now let me show you. I'm not sure why I cut these out. This was probably going to be an inner border, so maybe I'll have two inner borders. Because I was looking at it thinking, well, no, it probably was left over from when I cut the border pieces. But then I looked and said, there's enough of this, maybe more. Here is the border print. And this is just one part of it. And so what I found that I don't remember cutting this stuff up. That was a long time ago, and here's the border. And so when you see Jenny Byer's borders always have thin and wide and then thin and wide. So I think that let me grab this other piece again. I think that if I put these two together, I think they'll look just grand. And what I'll probably do is put this one against the quilt as it is, then put this in between and have this border. Whoops, hold on. I can make this work. I've got 10 fingers. All right, here we go. So I think that's probably what I'll do. And you know what? I think it's going to be a very regal looking quilt. And this fabric was English Garden by Jenny Byer. All right, so there we go. And I've got all the borders, and I'm going to use her instruction sheet on how to cut them so that I get the same pattern on each side and across the top and bottom. So I think that's pretty, and hopefully you can see why I wanted to use this as the binding. So I got so excited. So now, then looking for this, I found a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, let me put this out of the way, back over there. Now, I did find some more background fabric that if I really, really, really wanted to, I could take out each piece that the color ran and replace it with that. But I don't want to, okay? That is too much like work. And you know what? The fact that it has some stains on it from the color running, that's part of its history. You know, just like my scars from surgery, it's part of my history. So I'm leaving it as it is. I'm finishing it off. I'm hoping to have it finished pretty soon. And I wanted to show you, let me grab some stuff. I want to show you what I found when I went looking for it. All right, let me get these things out of the way for now. I've got so much to show you. Oh, okay. This will be next. Look at what I found in the Jenny Byer box while I was looking for any fabric that would match this quilt. Now, in the past, I used to think of Jenny Byer fabric, hallowed ground, sacred stuff. So it had its own storage compartment. The rest of the fabric was the common fabric, and it just stayed wherever I put the common fabric. Hi, Charlene Piperon. So good to see you. So the rest of the fabric, you know, the Joanne fabric and all, they just went in the common area. But this I kept separate, all to itself. The only problem with that is then it didn't get used. And it's my favorite fabric. This is probably almost 5 yards. And this is called eyelash. She called it eyelash fabric. And look at this. So I ironed it. It's like 2 pieces of it. I ironed it, put it on one of the comic board bolts. So now that's ready. I found this. This is not a Jenny Byer, but it's beautiful. So this is ironed, ready. But look at all this fabric that wasn't getting used because it was hidden away, and it's if Michelle will know, under my cutting table, I have this storage thing, and I put a little curtain covering it, and so I never go under there. But look at these fabrics. Aren't they grand? And I've all these years 20 years I've had this fabric. Maybe some of them are a little newer than that. But I've had all of this fabric underneath there. So I got it out. I ironed it. I put it on the comic bolts. This is not Jenny Beyer either, but isn't that magnificent? That's a Robert Kaufman. And I plan to do some broderie purse with some of these designs. It's exquisite. So, but this is an early Jenny Beyer. Look at this stuff. And this is very early Jenny Beyer. So is this. And I even found, I don't know why that was stuck under there. Then 2 more early Jenny Beyers. You can feel the difference in the fabric. Very early, probably the earliest Jenny Beyer that I have. And then here are these. Even that is Jenny Beyer. I didn't realize. And look at this. Isn't that great? These are all Jenny Beyer. So anyway, what I decided was this fabric must come out into the general population and get used. So now, so that, that one trip into the storage cat little thing with the drawers was very successful. And I'm going to show you next week what else I found in that storage. I found an array of Jenny Beyer borders that I didn't even know I had. And I found some wonderful kits that I'll share with you. And maybe you can help me figure out which kit to work on when I do my next work on a Jenny Beyer. All right. Now, while I was working yesterday, I spent almost 4 hours. I had a table back. I have I'll tell you about my folding table in a minute. But I had a bunch of all my little pieces and scraps to go through. Now, some people who are very organized, Jody, are so amazing that they pre-cut their scraps. So they're 2.5-inch squares, 2.5-inch strips, 3-inch, whatever. They cut them into sizes they know they're likely to use them in. But there's a problem with me. I'm a little too lazy. I'm easily distracted. So the latest, greatest project is always right there. And I don't really like scrappy quilts. So I tend to have a scrap bag. And when it gets too big, then I send it to Jody. And she makes sense of it all. But I wanted to show you what I was doing yesterday when I was working on what I had to go through, because they were smaller pieces like this, whereas is this even big enough to be put on a cardboard bolt? Not really, but it's such a special, wonderful fabric that I wanted to make sure that I see it and use it. So that I put on the bolt. Now, then I come across a piece. This is an early Jenny Beyer. Early. I thought, what do I do with this? Well, let me show you. If the piece is at all big enough to fold, and see what I do too, and see that smaller strip? I stick it inside here. There's 2 strips that I didn't use when I cut it. I stick it inside like this and then fold it. And that way, any fabric that I have like this is right together. But see how it can be folded? Even though it's pretty small, it can be folded. Well, this, you can't really, this is scrap size. So if it's not easily folded to put in my small piece file system, then it goes into the scrap bag. This now I have these plastic silverware sorters that I then put these folded scraps. Now here's a piece And I looked at this and thought, is this big enough to use on a cardboard thing? Not really. It's, yes, this is 2 thicknesses, but that seems like a waste to put on cardboard. So what I did is then I folded it. I have an approximate size that I like to fold these. I know they will fit in those plastic containers. See how they're all about, and this is probably, let me put my glasses on here, about 4 to 5 inches wide. So that's, and then I found this, and I love this fabric. I don't know what I used it for, but obviously I had cut this out before. And it's an early batik that's still stiff because not all of the wax was boiled out of it. But that is so cool. And so I've got, evidently I had these little strips, these squares, a bigger square, and rectangle. This was left over. So I put them all together, iron them real hard to hold them together. So these are going to go into my small scrap storage. This goes into the scrap bag. So I just thought I would tell you how I do it. And I don't, whoops, sorry. I don't cut them into specific things because then I'd never get anything done. It's way too hard for me. I got to drop this curtain down because it's bright. I'll let you look at Jenny while I drop this curtain down. And of course, I mean Jenny, the fabric, the quilt. Ah, that's much better. Ouch. My finger got caught in the blinds. I got an owie. So, all right, let me see. So okay, let me show you this really quickly. Do you see the folding table? That's one of my things that I'm using as my method to clean this room. And I take the folding table and I'll pick one surface, take everything off that surface, put it on the folding table. Then I sort and decide where it goes, whether it gets thrown away, whether it gets put in its rightful place, or even if I'm not quite sure yet. But each, I try to just touch it one time. And so yesterday when I worked down here, that table was piled high. I got everything gone through. Another thing I do in storing my scraps and my fabric pieces, everything gets ironed, whether it's put into a fold. It doesn't get ironed for the scrap bag. But if it's made into a small folded piece, whether it's put on the little bolt, everything is ironed. Iron fabric takes up less space and it wants your attention. If you just had everything kind of shoved in a bin, a lot of stuff's going to get missed. But having it ironed and folded makes it easy to see. And for a brain like mine that's constantly spinning, I need it to be easy to be seen. Polly, hi. That's my Jenny Buyer that I had tucked away in a plastic bag for 20 years because I spilled a soda on it. Then the red ran on the background, and it's all hand-pieced. This is why I fell in love with quilting again. This is why I love Jenny Buyer. Her vision, her fabrics, her designs. This is a quilt pattern from Jenny Buyer. And I think each block has 27 pieces. Let me see. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. No, it has a whole lot more than 27 pieces. I got to 27 and I just did the top half. Oops. That's a lot of pieces. But anyway, so I am now working on that again. I'm hoping by next weekend I sit in the evening and I hand sew it in the recliner. And that's another thing. People sometimes say, how do you get so much done? I can only sit at a sewing machine 3 or 4 hours. Then my my seat gets sore and I get antsy. So I have to get up and do something else. And in fact, yesterday when I was vacuuming, I was tired after working down here for almost 4 hours. So what I would do is I'd vacuum 2 rooms and then go sew, then come back and vacuum 2 more rooms, then go sew. I have to kind of motivate myself by saying, if you do some vacuuming, then you can go sew. But the nice thing is it keeps me from sitting too long, and it keeps me from standing up and hurting my back too much. So it works out. So anyway, okay, let me see. But I will be doing a dye project. Should be able to do it next weekend. But Tuesday I'm having that crown put on. They have to do so much grinding to get it ready for the crown. I'm not promising anything to anybody. So I'm going to say, Mark, could you please handle dinner that night? I don't care what. In fact, you know what? He already asked me. He said, what did you want to eat? And I said, I want my favorite comfort food, beanie weenies. And he uses, what is the name? You know, that the canned beans that you see the commercial and the golden retriever dog. I love their country style beans. So he gets a can of country style beans. He adds a little bit of Hormel chili to spice it up. And then he puts in a whole pack of Oscar Mayer beef hot dogs and little onion powder and chili powder. I love it. I love it. He cooks that, and it's like pure comfort food. That and some strawberry applesauce. I love it. So I've asked for that to be my crown dinner. Oh, you get one too. And you know, it's not that they really hurt you or anything. It's just I don't like the sound of the drill. So I'm going to figure out how I can fool myself. I might just take some earplugs and kind of pretend I'm camping at my favorite lake. So anyway, but okay, I talked about cleaning up and how I handle cleaning the area. And I always, when this room is a mess, the first thing I do is tackle fabric, because that's usually my biggest mess. Once I get all the fabric ironed, refolded, and put away, I have a lot more counter space that I can then work on sorting the rest of the things in the room. Oh, I know what I forgot to tell you. And sometimes I throw things away. I found a candidate. 25 years ago, I thought I would make a quilt for my son. He was still a teenager then. And this is what I was going to make him. I thought, oh, it's wild and lots of colors. He'll like this. There's only one problem. Now, this is 1, 2, 3. It's an 8-pointed star, so to speak. But look at this. It would have better been a beanie. I'm serious. It's more of a beanie than a quilt block. And I put some effort into this, but most likely, I think a couple things went wrong. I have a feeling I didn't have a legitimate pattern. I just thought I could wing it myself. And I didn't really realize how it had to decrease so that it would lie flat. So I have, I guess, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 of these, and they are all beanies. Now, I don't really like them. So these are going to be thrown away because not all quilts are keepers. So I meant well, and, you know, hello, Diana B. Bernese, so good to see you. But I just thought I would tell you that there's no way to make this lie flat. I would have to take it all apart and try to figure out what size wedge ruler I would need to use to really be able to cut it. And you know what? At that point, I didn't know that you sew 4 of them in a half. You sew 4 of them, make sure they lay flat. Then you sew these 4, make sure they lay flat. Then you just sew across the center seam. I didn't know to do that. And that really made them into lovely beanies. Oh, honey, I'm not even sure anybody is, you hate to think of just throwing them away, but just to try to mail these to somebody else would be like at least $5. That's not worth it. I think it's time to say, bon voyage, have a good afterlife. But if I knew of a local group that would want them, I don't think anybody would. So, and you know what? That's okay. I know it feels terrible to throw things away, but if it doesn't bring you joy, I don't know how far around I'd have to drive to find anybody that would take it. Just toss it and feel the weight off your shoulders. So anyway, what can you do? But I thought I would show you that because it was so funny. I saw it, I found it, and I went, oh my gosh, I remember making this and not being able to figure out how to make them lay flat. And I kept thinking, well, maybe if I iron them enough, they'll go flat. Well, maybe if I hand quilt them, they'll go flat. Oh, please. So I think that is funny. And I just showed you that just for you to get a good laugh and to say, sometimes you have to say, bye-bye. It's done. I'm done. All right. So now I showed you the fabrics that were in the Jenny Buyer and the progress I've made on it. Yay. Now I'm going to turn the board around. But as you can see, that quilt is very much worth saving. And I wanted to say, look at the secondary design that's made when you put the blocks together. You have a medallion right there in the center of each of them. So it's really worth saving. Okay. So now we'll turn around to this side, because what I have to share with you today is the progress I've made on my Indigo quilt. I will have this quilt on the frame in less than 2 days. I'm so excited. And that's what I was telling you earlier is, when I think of designing a quilt, or I go look and say, what quilt do I want to make? Too often I go for the 30-some piece block or whatever it is, 40-piece block. I go for the complicated. Well, I forgot what a joy it is to work on a quilt that's simple and straightforward. That's just, you put on Netflix, just something to listen to in the background, and you do chain piecing and you just sew. I love just sewing. It's fun to put the stuff through and see what I've got. So here is where I had gotten to. And remember, I told you that for me, I hate doing something repetitive. Now, if I break them down to one thing at a time, it doesn't bother me. So what I do is I chain piece these puppies. Now, what is chain piecing, you might ask? Chain piecing is where you do the same step on that block for all blocks. This quilt kind of looks like a kite, on a pretty day, spring day. This quilt is going to have 30 blocks. I fully made the test block, but then I said, okay, get ready to do chain piecing. It is so efficient. It saves so much time. The earliest I heard about chain piecing was from Eleanor Burns. And so I'm going to say, roughly speaking, and feel pretty safe saying this. What is my hair? Oh, that is just lovely. Okay. But anyway, so she used to go with her sons and would dumpster dive in a clothing plant near where they lived. And then she would take the fabric and make quilts to sell to make money for the family. And this was back in the early days. Well, when her sons would go in the dumpster to pull out the fabric, they were looking, because she would get a phone call from a man at the plant saying, we got a full dumpster for you today. And they'd go through. She noticed these waistbands of pants that had the waistband, the pockets, on down. And it gave her the idea. Wow. Manufacturers know the most ergonomic, the speediest methods to do anything. So she incorporated that into her teaching of quilting. And I'm very thankful she did. So let me first show you. So I'm going to show you how I got there. Now these, I haven't finished this next step, but I'll take one of these. Now, I showed last week how to put the block together. So if you're interested in making a courthouse steps, go back to last Sunday. I made the whole thing while I was talking to you. But now I'm going to show you what chain piecing is and the benefit of chain piecing. Okay, let me drop the camera down just a little. Sorry on your eyes, everyone. Okay, now, here we sort of go. Hold on. Okay. All right. That's good enough. Okay. So you see here, I already have some that I've been working on. All right. Let me bring this back up a little. Okay. Now, the next thing, the last piece I put was this white piece, because you go back and forth. One blue, then one white, or actually I do the blue on each end, then the white on each end. Okay, let me make sure. Okay, so now I take a strip of my lightest blue, and I just have to look at it each time and say, what side has more color? And that's this side. You usually can tell because it has more definition. So I'm going to take and lay this right here. Now the nice thing of chain piecing is you don't have to worry about your fabric being dragged into the hole because you've already got it tethered to the piece before it. So number one, that's a good reason. Now I lay the fabric on here and a beautiful pattern. I don't have to pin this. I just go along, make sure it's kind of lined up like that, put my fingers near the end. Let me see. Okay, so I put my fingers near the end, and here I go. And so making sure I keep the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and here I go. Now when you finish sewing, you do not cut your thread. You pick up another piece. You get another scrap of fabric, then a next blue, the palest of the blue border or piece, and off you go. And you just keep doing this. So that's why it's good to have a good audiobook going, a TV show you don't have to look at, you just listen to, radio, some good music, whatever, and then just zoom right along. Okay. Now, when I've done enough of a pile, then I'll hit my cut button on the sewing machine. And now let me bring you up and show you what I've got here. Here is what I was sewing before we went on air. So now you see why it's called chain piecing. Another benefit of chain piecing, it saves thread. Now, most people don't really think about, oh, well, I want to save thread, but it makes a big difference. You don't end up with at least 6 inches tail every time you start a new piece. So it does save thread. Then also, you're already in the mindset. You have the muscle memory. You know exactly what to do. You do it repetitively, and it will speed up your sewing time by about 50% over making one whole block at a time, doing them all in pieces. And the nice thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to think as much, so it lets your brain relax. And I like that because my brain stays pretty busy. Now, I've shown y'all in the past this little thing I made. And I used to have a metal pen. It looked like this, but it had a hole in the center. And then it came with a seam ripper that would sit in the hole and do it. And you can find various ones and buy them. But they're called chain piecing cutters. Just don't get something too short. That's too hard to use because I'll show you why. But it was just this little stand right here. Well, I knew that thing was going to fall over all the time. So we hot glued it to a piece of wood. I painted the piece of wood, put my name on the back so I can take it to class with me. And then it uses these little tiny inexpensive seam rippers. And I put one in here that had the point broken off. Because sometimes when I would go to use this and you go to put it down, you might catch that point with your finger. So this is perfect. You know, if you want to snip off that point, you don't even need it. So now I'm going to bring you down and show you how to use this. It is so easy. All right, let me find the last one. Here we go. Now, whoops, need you down a little bit more. Whoops, don't you dare. Okay, let me tighten it. Okay, so here it is. I put the little protective ball in the back, so it helps me see where to place the threads, and I just come along and go like this. It's just this easy. Now, there's no faster way to do this. If you were to hold scissors, you couldn't do it this quickly. Okay, now here I have another, I have another bunch of them. And so whatever way you can find, to me, this is the setup you want. And you want it tall enough that you don't have to try to fit this right down near, some of them, they have these tiny little things. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to sit up here where I can see it good. There we go. Then when you're not using it, take it out and put it down in the holder. Isn't that cool? Now, I don't remember where I got it. It could have been from Connecting Threads. It could have been from Missouri Star Quilting. And I don't think I've seen one like it anytime recently. But just letting you know, you can make your own. You can take a seam ripper and put it in a piece of wood and hot glue it in. You could take it and cut it. Get someone to cut a slot in a section of wood, hot glue this into it, and just make sure you put a cap on that because you don't want to catch your finger on that. So especially if you're not using it. So anyway, so now I have these, and I will come over here. I'll come over here. Can somebody still see me? Because we're still on the last words Want to make sure we're still live. Oh, Jody, yesterday was awful. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. Well, I hope she's going to feel better. So now I just come over to my iron. And my iron was kind of sitting resting, so I've got to let it warm back up. But I have gotten these blocks. Oh, there you go. You see me. Good, 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 good. I'm sorry you had a rough day yesterday, Miss Jody. Gosh. So now what I'm going to do, boy, this iron still hasn't really heated up. Hold on. But what I do, when I finished ironing this, I will lay it in a pile this way because this is the side that needs the next strip. Oh, honey, thank you. I tell you what, I have fallen so in love with it. And so here I'm just going to come along like this, give it a good press, lay it just like that. So when I pick up the pile, I know exactly what it needs. Now here's one that's had both pieces put on so that I could have a couple of them to show you. But I think this is going to be such a tranquil quilt. And so what it needs next, let me see where they are. I had them. I think I put it back here. Where are, they might be under here. Oh, here they are. Here are the neck strips that need to go on. So you're now seeing this. The last part is this strip here and this strip here, then there. The block is done, and then I put them together. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Oh, man, that really is frustrating. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to have to go through all that. That's terrible. But anyway, so here is the block with just one white strip left to go. And what I did is I wanted it to be darker in the center and then get progressively lighter. Now, this is a little bit light for me, but you know, that's okay. So this block is ready for a different stage. And here are my strips of the light blue. And the nice thing about doing a quilt with varying, like an ombre effect, is you get to use a wide variety of the fabrics you dyed. So now, oh, I did another one. I might have gotten a few done with both sides so I could show you. And you notice I'm kind of just going up and down. I'll do a little bit side to side, but I'm trying not to distort. By doing this, I'm trying not to distort the fabrics. If I put too much pressure this way, it would start distorting these edges. And these blocks, now, they've got to have one more strip of white, but these blocks, one block will go this way, the one block will go this way, and on and on. And that way it'll just, I think it's going to be pretty. I could put them this way, but I don't know. I'll play with it. That would give me a big white area for beautiful quilting, but I will play with it once they're fully done. But I think this is prettier with a little bit more color in the last blue. So if you notice, 4 of the blues, and there'll be 5 of the white strips. But I tell you what, this is my first 2-color quilt, and I'm in love with it. I am in love with it. Oh, Diana B knows. Oh, honey. Oh, thank you. And you know what? thank you to the ladies who share their stories, because it does help. It does help to hear people say, I went through it, I got through the other side, and thank you so much. You all are so wonderful. And you know, you end up when you first get a diagnosis, you think you're the only one in the world. And then you find people from all over that come and tell you, oh, I've gone through that too. And oh, what a blessing. What a blessing. All right. So I'm just going to try to organize these just really quickly. And then we're going to do show and tell. And then after show and tell, I'm going to do a hand-pieced block, that very complicated Jenny Beyer. I'm going to show you how to do a Y seam. But see how I put these now? When I bring them over to my sewing machine, then I just grab a piece of the blue, lay it there, and just stitch right down. So this is going together very fast and very enjoyable. And I'm going to remember how satisfying it is to do an old-fashioned quilt that can be done in, a week or two. Because that's a lot to say. Yes, it's a simpler project, but actually getting one done feels pretty darn good. And I tell you the truth, I am madly in love with Indigo. Oh, so Mark was talking, because, I'm giving this quilt to Mark. And we sleep under separate sheets and separate blankets, because I run hot, he runs cold. And so this is going to be his blanket. And he said, well, I like to wash my sheets and blankets with bleach. And I said, this blanket must never be touched with bleach. I said, these fabrics are my babies. You do not bleach this. And he said, well, what happens if the dogs throw up on it or something? I said, we will use that stain remover. I forget the name of it. Shout Out or something. Shout. I said, we will use that, or we will find a non-bleach stain remover, but we will never bleach this. And I made him swear. It was like, if you're going to bleach this, I'm not giving it to you. Because I am just a wee bit protective of my baby fabric. When you make a fabric, I shouldn't say I make it. When you dye the fabric yourself, you get very attached. But isn't it nice to see all these different blocks? And what I did is I kind of grouped color groupings together. So some of them have a really intense color palette, and some of them are more faded, more muted. And that should make the quilt sparkle. It'll draw your eyes around from block to block, because they're not all the same. And that should be pretty amazing. So, as you can see, I got a pretty good distance. Oh, that's all of them. So now I've ironed everything that I had to iron. These are ready for the white strip. I have some that don't have any of the side blues. So it's an easy way to wrangle 29 blocks, because if I had to make them one entire block at a time, I would probably not last very long. I find that just too boring, and it would make me crazy. I'm going to put those there, and I'm going to, so when you cut out 60 of a fabric, you end up with quite a hunk of fabric there. And oh, let me see if I can show you. I was so stingy with my precious fabric that I pieced together fabrics to go in here. I was not going to waste one little bit. And I said, nobody will notice, but it was way too precious to waste any of it. All right, so let's see. Jenny Meyer stained quilt. Yeah, indigo. Value of chain piecing. All right, so I think we're ready right now to go to, let me put this over here. Let me turn out my light. I want someone to come take our rain. They can have it all for themselves. I'm done with the rain. It's so humid down here, guys. So humid. All right. Put that right there so I won't forget it. I'm going to turn off this iron so I can cool off in here, move my fan a little closer because it's warm. All right, I haven't had a chance to go through and do any culling or straightening of the pictures, so let's just go in there and see. All right, here we go. Come on, Deb. Okay. Oh, okay. Let me go up here. All right, we have Miss Alexis. Oh, I love going through her pictures. The first thing I want to show you is the work that she did. It was about 5 years ago she did this. And I want you to notice how far she has come in that span of time. Okay, this is the same character. She said she invented this character. I love her creativity, but look at her hand embroidery and beadwork now. That's amazing. Just amazing. Such a talented gal. And I hope she keeps it up. I know it too. It brings a lot of joy. Isn't this neat? I just love that. It exercises her creativity, her handwork, her level of ability with a needle and thread. And it's amazing. And the number of beads, look at that. And let me see. Look at that. That shows how she starts out with the beads. Really amazing. So, Alexis, we're really tickled, hon. Keep showing us your beautiful work. Okay. I wish this camera wouldn't lean. Let me see if I can get... Oh, there we go. Good job, Deb. Okay. Now, Miss Betty. Yes, I love her sea turtle quilt. And we wish her well with teaching a class. I know she'll be great. And I love the fabric, the chickadee, the waves, the sailboats, lighthouse. I love all of it. The little flowers here. Just beautiful, hon. Great layering work. Great job. All right, let's see where we're going now. I don't think I have anything really new. Let's see. Here is Miss Debbie. And this will probably be the last time we'll see these, but they are gorgeous. And I just love where she actually uses twine to replicate a sand fence. And the shells come out onto the border. I just love that. I love the sail she used striped fabric. How cool is that? And I need to find out how she did all of this texture on that fabric. Very good. Now her next one is her wonderful winter Wonderland. I love it. I love her trees. I love the definition. Great job. Boy, I tell you what, that snow scene looks good after the heat we've had. I love this seahorse. That is just phenomenal. The wavy quilting lines really emphasize the undersea nature. The way she used K-facet fabrics. Look at the fabric she did for the eye. How fascinating. I love it. Way to go. I love the seascape. Let me see if I can bring, oh yes. Now we can see the beauty that she added in the thread sketching and the beading. Look at that. This beadwork looks like a starfish. Isn't that cool? Great, great job. I love that. Okay. Now, let's see where we're going. Miss Diana B. She sent some great things this week. I can't wait to share them with you. Now, this quilt has such an interesting story. She had worked on this and one day decided she was not happy with it, and she took it and threw it in the trash can. Yes, threw it in the trash can. Luckily, it didn't stay in the trash can that long. And then guess what? It went on to win a second place ribbon at a quilt show. Is that the coolest story? And I would love to know exactly, like, how did she do the starfish? I love the shadowing. It's wonderful. Wonderful. And I love the way it's like jellyfish or something on the sand, and the way the water is, if it's still a little wet and darker. It's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Then look at this. This is a quilt of her daughter and the dog looking at minnows going by. Was it her daughter or granddaughter? I've forgotten now. But look at these cute little minnows that they're watching go by. Isn't that wonderful? Good job, hon. Let's see. Then her son is a Star Wars fan, like my son is. And look at that that reminds me of the modern quilts that are made now. They're wonderful. Very graphic. They command your attention. They're wonderful. And then look at this. Look at her thread painting. And I wanted Mary to see this, because when Mary does her pet portrait, the thread painting, the thread stitching is going to make all the difference. Great, great job, Diana. You are very talented. I'm so glad she sent us a close-up of this, because when I looked at one of the other quilts, I saw this on the wall and thought, oh, I want to see that. Now, I'm going to make sure to show you very close up, because I want you to see how she emphasized the movement in the sky and the water, not only with color, but look at the thread sketching. Look at that. It emphasizes the movement. And then check out the water. That is fabulous. That is fabulous. And the houses on the shoreline. And I love that she was able to do the man in the sailboat in shadow. How awesome is that? And look how intense that sunset is on either side of that sail. That's wonderful. Way to go, hon. I want to know if she wants to teach us any classes to us. She's very talented. I'm so tickled when we get, just every person here has a lot of talent. Here's Miss Dolores's Bernese Mountain Dog, and look at the thread painting in that one. That's fabulous. Very realistic eyes and nose. I love it. In fact, the cat portrait had such good eyes. Then Miss Jody, she has been so wonderful during all of this to share in the portrait making. These are the colors that she's using just for the hand. So there were 6 colors, 6 shades of green. Love it. And see how she does all the little pieces. I think they're just the fingernails. Yes. Look at this. She is so, so talented. And that's all for that one hand. And see how she added extra around the pieces where it tucked under the darker colors. The dark never tucks under another because it will show through. And look at the result of that hand. Isn't that amazing? And it really looks like it's coming right out of the picture to get you. So she's the best. She is so, so talented. Oh, I love it. But now see that here's the before she did the hand. Let's zip back and see the after of that hand. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? All of her monster portraits have been in black and white, but I think she's smart to add some green to this one. I think that's very smart. All right. Then Kathy Klein. Oh, this is her beautiful. We were talking about the neutral quilts, and this is her version of Alex Anderson. Alex Anderson had a book out, Neutral Quilts, and this was one of the patterns in that book. So beautiful, beautiful work. I love it. Way to go, Kathy. Kathy's another very talented quilter. Now, let's see. Linda McCormick was working, and she'll let us know pretty soon what her latest progress is on this. But I love how she just takes little treasures, puts them together, used ink tints up in here to add color and warmth. And she will put all this together, then put on hand stitches and turn it into a work of art. So she is definitely a talented artist. Our Miss Mary. Look, here is her portrait of a cat that she is going to do. She's posterized the picture of the cat, and this is where I'm glad that she can see Diana's cat, because here, that's how she's going to be able to do all these little hairs. There's no way to cut tiny little strips of fabric to make that happen. So way to go. I think she can do it. We're all going to give her lots of encouragement. Our Miss Marcia, who is the queen of crochet. Look at all those colors in that. I would love it if I lived close enough to Miss Marcia to sit in the evening and crochet with her. She could teach me so much. I know how to do it, but I don't know how to read patterns. I just know very basic. And then let's take another look at Melanie's husband's quilt. She said that he was watching us do that fish project, and then he thought he would do a fish project, and he did an outstanding job. And I've seen the pattern for this, but he added more with the 3D effect of the seaweeds and plants, underwater plants that go behind or in front of the fish. I love this quilt. I can't wait to see what he does next. Okay. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that, so let me quickly run back. All right, now that was Miss Melanie's. Okay, Miss Mitty. Let's see what, oh yes. These are probably going to, sadly, I'm probably going to have to change these out soon. But she took a class, and I would say she mastered the class. Here it is earlier on. Now look at what all of the thread painting has done to bring that to life. Isn't that amazing? I love it. Way to go, Miss Mitty. Way to go, darling. All right, now let's see where we're going. Miss Polly. Oh, I'm so excited to show you this. Miss Polly's so patient with me. When she said she was going to be doing this, I wanted to see a picture of this. And then I wanted to see a picture of the fabrics. You wait. She sent all of that. I can't wait to see it. And she also asked me a question. Let me see. Okay. There is fabric that comes with this kit that's going to be used for the sashing. And it has a rickrack appearance. And she called and said, if I cut it the way they say, I can't be assured that... Ooh, pardon. Ooh. Okay. She said, I can't be assured that it will be horizontal or vertical. I'm worried it'll be crooked. What do you think? I told her I thought it would bother me if it wasn't reasonably horizontal or vertical. That if it got off, because when you fold fabric right sides together and just start cutting strips, you can't be assured that you're getting a level cut. So I don't know what the rest of you would think, but I told her, see, this is the fabric right here in question. And I told her I would cut the fabric with it open, making sure that I had it reasonably either horizontal or vertical as needed for the sashing. But look at feast your eyes on these amazing K-facet fabrics. Oh my gosh, boy does that man love color. I love it. That fabric right there, oh, isn't that a great one? But I just look at all these big flowers and flouncy things and dots, and oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun to do. Look at this. And it shows you can add every single color in the rainbow to your quilt. It's amazing how well they'll play together. Look at this. Isn't this amazing? But you see her dilemma with cutting the sashing is, what if it all goes askew? It's already busy enough, but we'll see what she comes up with. There's no wrong answer. It's just whatever makes her happy. But I love it. The cabbages, then the great big chrysanthemums. I mean, oh, look at all this. It's beautiful. So thank you for taking a picture of your fabrics. What fun. You are set for quite an adventure, Miss Polly. And I promise, as soon as I can get, I'm over halfway done cleaning this room. If I can finish it up, I would love to have a sewing day with you. Now here, Miss Rihanna, I'll show this amazing quilt. She's a relatively new quilter. You would never know it looking at that gorgeous Lone Star. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Miss Rihanna. And then one more. I just want to show the backing again for her dragon quilt. The measurement was slightly off, so it became its own quilt, to which I say yay, because that is a fabulous quilt. The motion. Oh, I can't wait to see it finished. Can't wait. And even if you've taken a picture of a project in progress, definitely send them to us once they're finished, because we also love to see how it's been quilted. Okay. This is, oh, look at this one. This is SJ. She's doing the Lisa Capon Quilt As You Go. I love that. And by the time she finishes with these blocks, it will be a finished quilt. Now, here she is. She lives in England, where they had the 106-degree temperatures. So they spent time at the beach. Oh, that's lovely. They would take a dinner and just go sit at the beach and watch the water. Isn't that wonderful? Whoop. Oh, here are Marcia, here are some wonderful crochet blocks too. Different versions of a granny square. I love that. That was the first thing I learned to crochet with granny squares. And here is more of the blocks of her Lisa Capon quilt. Just beautiful. And I love the gray fabric as the dividers. And then look at this wonderful checkerboard pattern, or I'm not sure what you call it, checkerboard, herringbone, whatever, this plaid for the roof. It's great. So love that. I need to go check up on Miss Lisa Capon. I just love her work. I have been just a little overwhelmed of late, but I think that was our last one. Oh, what fun. Thank you so much for sending in the photos. I love seeing pictures of your work. It inspires us. It gives us great ideas. Keeps us going. So, all right, let me close out your photos. My grandson had braces put in this week, my 15-year-old grandson. So, but his teeth look so good, I don't think he'll have one long. So here we go. All right. Isn't everybody so talented? That's what I was going to tell you. Please, if you have any show and tell, even if you're too shy to talk much during the sessions, send me your photos and I'll show them. I'd love to. All right, go to Our Time to Quilt at twc.com. If you send them to that email address, I'll get them and put them on our Sunday show and tell. So now what I'm going to do is show you how I love hand piecing. And I'm also going to tell you that I have decided to hand quilt that quilt. So let me turn it back around here. Oops, sorry, doggies. I'll turn it back around. Now I'm curious. I think I'm going to count the number of pieces in this block. I would love to know. So let me drop you down here. Okay. Whoops. Come on now. Be good. I'm not sure if talking to the camera is going to make it behave. Okay. Let me see. See, it's so hard to know when to stop. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 right there. In fact, let me get a scrap paper and a pen or pencil. And okay, so 6 times 4 would be 24 pieces right there. All right. Then the center has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 24 plus 5 is 29. All right. Then I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. Now 12. So 41 pieces in every block. 41 pieces. That's a lot of sewing. So now I know 41 pieces times 20 blocks. Let me see. Anybody have the math? 41 times 20? It's over 800. Let's put it that way. A lot. And I haven't even done the border and all that stuff. So, all right. So here are the 2 pieces that I did 20 years ago. And the thing they're missing is the center square in a square and this piece here, this piece here, and you have to have a border triangle to go on the outside here. And even though it looks weird, by putting the triangle this way, it's going to square off the block, okay? If you did it, well, it wouldn't work that way, but this will actually be one of the corners of the block. And then, whoops, I am missing 2 pieces of this, so I'll have to cut more. I know I have it. So now, let me find a needle, and I prefer to use a short needle. I get, oh, does this not have any on it? I get tinier stitches if I use a shorter needle. Huh, where are all my my needles? Okay, I will find one. Let's see. See, I do most all of my sewing upstairs. So let me find. I always have needles handy, so I'm kind of shocked that I'm having to search for one. But I will find one. Just you wait and see. No, don't need a beading needle. Okay, let's see. John James Milner. Quilting between. Well, no, I don't want to use embroidery needle. This Singer might work. Okay. The reason I don't want to use a Milner is it's very long. Okay, and also they're great for doing applique, but they tend to be a little too flexible to do straight line sewing through multiple layers of fabric. Okay? Now, you do know that when you take thread off a spool, that this is the way it's supposed to be used. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So what you do, this is the thread, this end of the thread. It's always better if you thread your needle before you cut it off the spool. I learned this from Alex Anderson, who said the way the thread is spun, it's wound, means this has to be the first thing. Now, let me quickly, okay, I give it a cut at an angle to make a nice sharp point on the thread. Now let me see, I know I can do this. I remember some of my ladies saying, I can't see to thread this needle. And I had no idea what that would be like. Oh, here we go. Got it in the hole now. Can I get it in there far enough? Yay! I did it. Okay. And then I'm going to, well, you know what? Let me hold on just a second. I'll be right there. Okay. This is my little hand sewing basket because I do most of my hand sewing upstairs. And so what I wanted to do, let me bring my threads, always leaving this end short so I know what end is going to be knotted. All right. Then I take and I'm going to run it through the thread heaven. And you can get that now. It's gotten a lot more expensive, but you can get it. And then if I want to, I'll make sure to put on my thimble. I've got some fray check. I meant to tell you, if you accidentally nip your fabric, so put this on it first, let it dry, and then try to carefully bring the edges together. But in here, I have a Jenny Beyer marking pencil. I have threads. I don't know why I have a paintbrush in there, but okay. I have a pen cushion. I have some silk thread for my applique. I have a good sharp seam ripper. So let's see. Oh, and I love these seam rippers that have a kind of a jelly soft bottom because do we have a guy here with us? That's wonderful. And but anyway, this is nice because let's say you take and open your seam up with a seam ripper. If you rub this along the fabric, it'll pull the threads out of the fabric. So I love those. I love when tools can do multi-purposes. All right, so now I've got the Thread Heaven or beeswax, whatever you want to use. You could even use regular candle wax. Run it across the candle. That just coats it and helps to keep the thread from fraying because, you know, you're going in and out of layers of fabric numerous times. So I made sure that this is the part of the thread that I just cut, leaving the spool of thread, okay? That way you know you're doing it the correct distance. All right, so now I'm going to take this piece right here, and I'm going to take this piece right here. One thing for you to remember is you have to line these up appropriately, and this part might surprise you just a bit, but okay, I like to take tailor's chalk, something like that, to get a good marking. But you have to decide, you have to look and say, where does the 1/4 inch mark reach that point? Okay, let me show you what I mean. All right, here is a 1/4 inch on this ruler. You need to find the space where it's a 1/4 inch from either side. Now, you hear what I'm saying? 1/4 inch from either side. And right there is, like down here, nope, look at it. It's all the way over there. But up here, let me see, right there, that's where there's a 1/4 inch. So that's where I'm going to put my mark. And since this doesn't just put a dot, I'm going to kind of put a X marks the spot. Okay, and then I'm going to come up here. And you can find rulers. I have a Jenny Beyer Perfect Piecer that's tucked away right now, but it's in my thing that goes to classes. But I'll make a mark right here at the 1/4 inch this way, then a 1/4 inch this way. Yep, so that's good. And I'll do the same thing here. Now, I have been sewing so long, I can eyeball it pretty darn good. But if in doubt, just mark right where the 1/4 inch. So now I know exactly where my seam should meet. Okay? All right, so now what I'm going to do is this piece, nope, this piece will go this way. I'm trying to make sure, nope, pardon me, it goes upside down. Okay, so I need to make sure that I have it the right way. Yes, because you want it to finish like a rectangle. So now what I do is this dot right there is going to match with where the 1/4 inch would go right there. Because if you just do from edge to edge, you're most likely going to make a mistake. You've got to do from the 1/4 inch seam where it would end there to where it would end up here. Okay, so you get one more pin put in here. I love these little glass-headed pins. This one's a little bent, but all right. So now, the first thing I do is I'm going to come up from the bottom and put a good anchor stitch right here. When I come in, I'm going to take a little nib like this. And you know what I'm going to do just for good measure? I'm going to run the needle through that loop and pull it up. And that way I'm very secure to bed. Let me get a little closer here. And all right. So now I'm going to take and make a stitch right where I just made that stitch, because that is important to make sure. It's like a locking stitch. If you were doing machine sewing and you always do like one stitch back, you kind of do another stitch right in that area. Okay, so here we go. Now I can take this out now that I have that part done. And what I want to show you is my needle moves very little. It is this hand right here that does most of the work. So I put the fabric on my needle and I just keep bending the fabric back and forth to load. It's called loading the needle. Okay. And since this is a short needle, I'll go ahead and just pull. I try to get a needle where I can load about 6 stitches on it. Now once I've pulled it through like that and I'm going to sew it, Becky Bostick, hi sweetie. She is my good friend nearby here and we go to retreat together. Oh, how is Becky? Oh, and I want to tell you real quick, when you get ready to start sewing again, go back a stitch. So that way, every few stitches, you've got another locking stitch, so that heaven forbid that the thread gets broken or cut, the whole seam won't just pop right open. And this was taught to me by Jenny Beyer herself. And you know what I think of Miss Jenny Beyer. The sun rises and sets on that woman. So here we go. So see what I've got now? See the stitches? And the smaller the better. And the straighter, and see how I go back and go 1 stitch back and then come up and start going again. And just see how the needle pretty much stays there. The other hand just loads the fabric onto the needle. Then you get ready, pull it up. So now I'm just going to go ahead and quickly finish this because I want to show you how to do a more complicated seam. And I'm just making sure that I stay about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. If I start getting too far out of the way, I may have to cut my thread and go back again. You are always welcome to draw a line at the 1/4 inch mark and keep yourself on, Now, the one thing I have to tell you, though, if you hand stitch the whole project, whatever your 1/4 inch will be the same, consistent throughout the project. So it's not as bad. One thing people fail to realize, that if you stitch some blocks on your one machine and then you switch to your other machine, that you most likely will then have different seam allowances. Different presser feet, different machines tend to sew differently. So you see how I went back that 1/2 a stitch to lock it? This one's going to get on my nerves, so I'm going to get it out of there. Pinning is not as important when you're sewing by hand as it is when you're sewing by machine, because it's more easy to adjust. It's so easy to adjust. So I'm coming down here. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm getting about 4 stitches loaded, and it is a tiny needle. But I love tiny needles because they're so much easier to work with. So Jenny Beyer also taught me that. And I didn't agree with her at first. I was used to using great big long needles. And she said, no, short needles are faster to work with and can do tinier stitches. All right, so now I'm going to stop about right here because I'm at the 1/4 inch mark. And then I'm going to press this open. Let me get my little, when I'm hand sewing, I don't iron them with an iron until I'm pretty much done with it, because I don't keep an iron right beside me. So a little wooden iron is wonderful. You just press it along, and there you've got a good seam. Now, if I had more sewing to do on this, like if I had another, if it were ready for the piece to go across here, I would just take another double stitch and then keep going with the thread. But since I don't have that area right now, I'm going to come on in here, and I just kind of made a loop of my, watch this again. I take and make a loop and come through the loop, and then I kind of hold the thread and guide it with my finger so that the knot is right down at the bottom. Okay. All right, now I just did 3 knots because this thread's a little bit fine and I wanted to make sure it stuck. And there it goes. Now, for my next piece, it's going to go on this side, okay? And then all of this is going to be trimmed down to the width of this. So we'll do all of that later. Actually, I was going to show you a Y seam, but this is not really making a Y seam as such, because it's so easy just to put these pieces into place. And then it always can help. You think you line it up, fold it back on a 1/4 inch, make sure it looks good. And I could also come in here and mark my 1/4 inch. And put a pin in here, then a pin down here. So I cut these pieces out over 20 years ago. There's a little more hanging off than I thought, but I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to sew it. So here we go. So now, one thing I failed to do, which I try to always do, and that is, as soon as you cut the thread, go ahead and make a knot. Is our Mary is there? Hi, hon. Rich, good question. I worked at a historic museum, and I made historic costumes for the interpreters, and anything that showed had to be done by hand. Well, I, at the time, hated hand sewing, but that job taught me soon to love hand sewing. So yes, I have been hand sewing for 30 years, and now I absolutely adore it. But, oops, let me come up. I like to come up from behind so I don't have to look at the knot. All right, so come up at the 1/4 inch. It's 1/4 inch in between both. Then I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go straight back down and come up again. So it's like you're taking a double stitch with that first one. But you want to make sure, you want to make sure that if that knot were to break, you're not going to lose everything. This would at least slow you down until you have a chance to repair it. It would slow down the unraveling. But it's very satisfying, except when you stick the needle in your finger underneath. But you'll notice I'll get marks on my fingernails where I'm feeling for the needle to know when to bring it back up. And in fact, my hands are very busy. They do gardening, they do cleaning, they do crafting, they do sewing, they do care for dogs, birds. So my hands show they're working people hands. So I was looking at them thinking, I haven't polished my nails in forever, but you know what? I don't have time. I got better things to do. That's how I look at it. Some people I love seeing beautiful nails, but I just don't like spending the time. So see how many stitches I've got on that? Then pull it back up through. Jenny Beyer can sew by hand just about as quickly as you can sew by machine. See how I go back a half a stitch so that I've just locked it, and on I keep going. And the needle stays pretty still. It is the other hand that's moving that fabric. And you can see how tiny the stitches are. I like that now. You won't get them that tiny when you first start out. Sometimes when I first started out, I would turn around, I'd get to the end and turn around and sew back across because my stitches just weren't that small and I was afraid it made it weak. So, but it's up to you. But I love this. This is so peaceful for me. Yeah, exactly. Who's got time to, because you know what I do? I inevitably touch something before I should, mess them up, and then get all frustrated. So I tried using that Insta-Dry kind of nail polish, but it stays soft for too long, and I was forever messing it up too. So I think I'll just, just whatever. But see how I get the little marks on my fingernail? But this finger usually gets pricked too. And that's another thing. If you do a lot of hand sewing like I do and you're pricking yourself, let me see if I can find. What I have to do sometimes is get an emery board, and on the softer side, I'll just use it on my finger and smooth it back out so that my finger, that's a good idea, Mary. So that if I can keep these areas smoothed out a little bit, they're less likely to prick fabric. But I'm proud of my hands that are working hands. If you ever hear somebody teasing about small hands, you know they haven't worked. Because physical work is what leads to bigger hands. We used to always talk about farmers had these big hands, and it was like such a sense of pride with them because they worked hard. So that's what my hands are. They work hard. So there we go. So now I'm hoping you get a chance to see that it's really pretty easy to hand sew for quilting, and it can be very relaxing, very peaceful. You can put on a good book, and boy, you're feeding your soul as well as creating something. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, I only have a couple more stitches to make, and then I'll open up this side and show you that too. But I know what I was telling you. I cannot wait to hand quilt this quilt. If I've done all this, every part of it by hand, then I don't want to put it on my frame. I want to do the rest of it by hand. So I'm very excited about that. The only thing I might do is sew the first part of the binding on by machine and then flip it over and sew it down by hand, because sewing a binding on by hand, that's a lot of work when you have arthritis. All right, so now, let me just tighten that all the way. I just put 3 knots in the bottom of that. Now I'll trim this. Get into the habit when you do hand sewing of immediately knotting your thread so that you're ready to go the next time you pick up a needle. And how I do that is I have the thread underneath the needle right there. I wrap it 3 or 4 times. I take and hold the wrap with this hand while I push the needle up and pull the thread through, and that will pull a nice, let me show you the knot. This is just a little stuck on lint, but there's the knot right there. All right, now, so I can put that needle aside for now, but it's already knotted, ready to go. And then I will take this. my wooden iron and I will run it. You can use your fingernail if you don't have a wooden iron. You can also use a clothespin, because a clothespin has, let me show you, a clothespin has a flattened side, or just use this. Just the rubbing, the friction and the pressure will get that to lay flat. So there you go. And then I would make sure to cut these dog ears off. They're not needed. Trim this. Oh, that's one thing too I wanted to show you. Grading seams. Okay, here you have 1, 2, 3 layers of fabric right here. What I would do is trim it just a touch, and that way you won't have this hard lump. See? Now it's a lot smoother. You still leave 1/8 of an inch, but if you just trim that junction, and let me show you my blocks and show you something. Okay, with these, I do trimming. So under here, when you have these junctions, the intersections where fabrics come together, it will leave a little bump that is likely to be felt when you use the quilt, and it's liable to bump and jump the person who actually quilts the quilt, because it can actually make the needle jump. So I like doing what I call grading the seams. This one has already been graded. I'll show you with this one how to grade a seam. See this area? Because you have this heavier buildup. And you just come in on the underneath layer. You come in on the underneath layer and cut it to 1/8 of an inch. And you only do it on the underneath layer. Let me tell you why. Because if you did it along the top too, I'll show you why that doesn't really help. Okay, very carefully, just cut off. Okay, now it was the underneath layer, and that's because this layer you want it to lay smooth. And if you have that underneath shorter, then it acts like a triangle, like a wedge, and it helps the fabric lay flat. If I cut the top edge, it would want to stick up and just get into trouble. And then go back and see like this. I accidentally caught part of this over. I cut it loose there, and I'll make sure to iron it back in place. And underneath here is another trouble area where you can have too much fabric built up. So I came under here and just nipped out the underneath fabric. So now that will lay flatter. So that's some grading of seams is something that I will do in areas where you have too many seam allowances. It's something that I learned doing clothes sewing. And like right here, I know I said do most of the trimming underneath, but these little excess pieces are not needed at all. They don't add to the strength, they just add to the bulk. So anywhere you have too many come together, like right here, and you can feel that, then just carefully take, because it's a seam allowance, and just trim that off. Okay? So those are just little ways if you want your quilt to lay nice and flat and not have any lumps and bumps. Also, if you want to do this ahead, I've got to put another blue edge on this. So I just grade that seam right there so that when I sew the next one on, it won't be as heavy. So often I will take these, when I iron a big bunch of them, I'll take them into the living room and just do the little trimming. Like right here, just nick off that. Here, just trim it down a little, and that'll just give a flatter intersection the next piece you put on. And you just want, see, this feels good, just kind of anywhere you feel it's just too stiff or too much or a big lump, go to the seam allowance and see if there's any place you can take out a little. Right here, when I sew the next strip on, it'll make a big lump. It's better now. Take it off now than later. That way you can sew right over it. You don't have to worry. So that was the other thing I wanted to show you, is kind of how I grade the seam allowances on the quilt. Also, now is the chance to get out unnecessary threads. This thread, if it sat on the white and you quilted it because it's blue, I guarantee you that would show through. And that can ruin a quilt. If you're going to ever enter a quilt in a show, do not have any threads caught under the fabric once it's quilted. Now let's say, but you didn't see it and now you see it. Then you just come over, like pretend you can see it under here. Come in with your needle, go into the weave of fabric and try to catch that thread and bring it back to the hole. Then you usually can pull it right out. But I just like this blue right here, that's a problem. That will show through once the quilt is quilted. So, and you decide how much time you want to spend fussing with it. It might not be worth the fuss, but when I judged a quilt show, I had to mark down a person who had their seams, they had them ironed the wrong way, and all of the red fabric showed through the white. So anything I can do, like right here, okay, here's a problem for me. I had to iron this out this way, even though it's got blue, but look at this blue. See how the blue sticks out beyond the white? That's going to show through that seam when I quilt it. So what I'm going to do is come in here very carefully. Now's the time to fix this stuff. And I'm going to nip away this blue down to 1/8 of an inch. So it's still there to give support for the seam. But now, watch. Now when it comes out there, that will not show through. It was hanging over. This one's hanging over too, even though it's just a little bit. So these are just ways, if you want to know what does it take to get a prize-winning quilt, all of these kind of things. Now, I can't say I know from experience because I've never won a prize in a quilt contest, but I do know from having to judge one what judges are looking for. And just make sure that you shorten your stitch length if you're going to do any grading of seams, because you want them to be nice and sturdy. All right, I think I've shown you all that I wanted to do today. And do remember that, what was I going to say? This is a wonderful, I think Dritz makes these, and you can drop it into a cup, put a cup of water in the microwave for a couple minutes to get it to bubble, then bring it out, drop this in, fish it out with, something that won't burn your hands, and as soon as it's cool enough that you can stand it, put it on your finger and let it cool on your finger. It will end up feeling so natural that there have been times I'm in the shower going, oh, my thimble's still on. So it's a really comfortable thimble. There was something else I was going to tell you. What was it? We were grading seams. But if if you go back and check these, like when I've been working on this, when I press it from the bottom and the top, because sometimes these seams want to kind of go wonky the other way. If I see a seam allowance that starts to look like it doesn't have enough, it's too close to the edge, that's the time to fix it. You can't do anything about it once it's quilted. But if you just take that little bit of time, you can save yourself a lot of headache. All right, any questions? Oh yeah, these plastic ones from Dritz or whatever, they're perfect for that. And you only drop it in the boiling water for like 30 seconds and then fish it out. And as soon as you can put your finger into it and let it cool. In the old days, oh gosh, I'm dating myself now. We used to get desert boots, and desert boots were suede, comfortable shoes. And you used to stick your foot in the toilet to get them wet while you had them on, and then let them dry on your foot, and they would form fit. And oh man, were those comfortable. I wasn't real fond of the sticking the foot in the toilet idea, but just the bottom line is if you can get something wet and have it dry or warm and let it cool, it will form fit. And that's awfully nice. And the smaller the needle, the tighter the stitch, and the easier it is on your fingers. Because having a long needle is a lot to wrestle with. All righty. There was one more thing I was going to tell you, and I have forgot. Oh, I know what it is. One of the things I want to do coming up, I want to make paper. And one thing that's really good to make paper is to add some fiber, some cloth, some cotton fiber. And so when I was cutting all the white fabric for my Indigo quilt, I saved all the scraps. And then I either took and cut it with scissors really tiny, or I ran the rotary cutter over the mat and just kind of diced it all up. But scraps like this are perfect to add. Now, you can use any scraps and any threads to make homemade paper. Just depends if you want the color in it or not. But, some color in the paper would be really attractive. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that while I was cutting, this is all my white scraps that I cut into tiny confetti. And I will add this in with my wood pulp when I make the paper. All right, and hopefully I'm going to have some time to do that. I am in a little bit of a rush because my granddaughter wants to make her gown, and I have to have this room clean before we start pulling out the satin and the organza, and oh my goodness. So anyway, all right. You'd never heard of what one? Uh-oh, what did I say? I forgot now, but anyway. I think I'm going to go rest in the recliner. Blossom, you think it's time to say goodbye and go rest? My Blossom's right down there. She looks so cute with her new haircut. All right, guys, you are the best. Thank you for spending this time with me. Jody, feel better, sweetheart. Oh, thank you, Rich. And Rich, it's really nice to see you. We'd love to get to know you. We have a group SIO, so come back again, chat with us some more, and you can join us, and that would be wonderful, because up to now it's been ladies, although Melanie's husband is a wonderful quilter. We're really tickled with him. But Rich, I hope you'll come back, and we'll enjoy you some more. It's we're interesting, all right. We're actually a very, very nice group. So, all right, everybody, y'all are the desert boot trick, yeah. Yes, that was one of the tricks that were going around the high school. It was like, yeah, just stick them in the toilet and get them wet. I think I'd rather just take a hose and wet them real good and then let them dry on your foot. In fact, I wish desert boots would come back because I love those. They were so nice. Oh, Rich's Patricia. Hello, Patricia. Oh, darn. I mean, we're happy to see you, Patricia. Don't get me wrong. I was just going to be excited if we had our first guy here. But, Patricia, we're glad to see you. So glad. I hope you'll come back. Send us some pictures of your work. If you think you might like to join our group's IO, send us an email to, let me write it one more time. Okay, hold on. Okay, our time. Whoops, put your glasses on, Deb. Whoop. I'll get it right, I promise. Our time to quilt at twc.com. There we go. So send pictures of your work you'd like to share with Show and Tell or your flower gardens or whatever. And if you'd like to join our group's IO and chat with us some more, I've been finding some good quilt patterns, free quilt patterns that I've been putting on lately. So we would love to have you join us. And y'all take really good care. Rich is her husband. Thanks. Okay. We got this now. That's wonderful. Well, so nice to meet you, Patricia. And I think, was there anybody? I was so happy to see Diana B back. Love it. So glad to see our wonderful Michelle and our dear, oh my gosh, Carol's there. Carol, hi, sweetheart. Oh, I love when I see Carol here. Everyone try to stay cooler. Hopefully it won't be quite as hot out there. Take good care. Hit like if you like it. Subscribe so you know when we're on. And I promise to get that pet portrait done this week. Jody, I promise I will do it. So, all right, everybody, take good care. Have a great week. I love looking and seeing that Jenny Buyer over my shoulder. I'm so happy to pull that out from 20 years ago and finish it. All right, take care, everybody. You are the best. Take great care of yourself. Have a good week. Bye-bye, everybody. You're the best. See you next week.